It's up!
I'm back.
All right, well, the Young Turks, Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Huge show ahead for you guys. Trump's been indicted, it turns out. He's been arraigned, and that happened for the third time in a short period of time. This was the most important. We'll get into details in a second. And then just Democrats having big issues. I weighed in on it publicly before. I'm going to weigh in on it today on the show. So a little bit of drama there. I wish there wasn't, but there is. And Marianne Williamson in studio in the next segment, so stay right here. Presidential candidate coming up. All right, Casper, big news first though.
Definitely some big news, so let's get right to it. All right, former President Donald Trump traveled to Virginia today to plead not guilty to all 4 counts during his arraignment. Of course, these counts were tied to his third indictment, this time for his alleged role in attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. This is what the scene looked like. There were, of course, individuals there to celebrate his third indictment, especially considering this has to do with him attempting to overturn the results of our democratic process. And there was even a group of people who broke out into a rock jam session. So that's kind of like what the scene was like. Based on reports, there weren't many Trump supporters there, but as you can see, there's heavy police presence. So in the immediate vicinity, I don't think a lot of people were allowed to be there. Now, with that said, I do want to go to the reaction from Trump immediately after his arraignment. And remember, he pleaded not guilty to all 4 counts. And when the press caught up with him for some chopper talk, here's what he had to say.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America. And it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
Do you want these trials to happen before the 2024 election?
Now, while Trump would like to believe that he is beating President Joe Biden by a lot in the polls, the latest New York Times Siena College poll has him in a dead heat. They are tied, which, to be quite frank with you all, is not a good look for President Biden and is concerning considering what the ramifications could be should Donald Trump actually get reelected. And I'll give you the details on that in just a moment, including some trolly moments from President Biden in just a moment. Cenk, your thoughts?
Yeah, so look, there's some theatrics to this that I explained in a live video where Trump looks at Jack Smith, who's in the room 15 feet away from him. Jack Smith, the special counsel, looks back at him. Trump does weird things like when they ask him his age, he says 77. 0077? No, that's called 77 here in America. Okay, so, but there's a huge part of this that's important. And this one is gonna be a little controversial. So mainstream media is always like, that's it, we got him. He's now, this is the one, right? And we haven't participated in that until now. I think this one could be really damaging to him, even among the Republicans. So why? Do I think the 37%, I know you guys discussed that, Anna, on a previous show, 37% of Republicans who are hardcore MAGA are going to leave him? No way, hell no. They're not even gonna look at the evidence in one way, in any way, shape or form. But look, especially, please let it be televised. Because especially if it's televised and they see witnesses, there's a lot of things that the establishment doesn't understand about Republican voters. One of the central ones is that they don't have access to the same information we have, right? They keep assuming like, how could they know that Trump lost 60 cases in a row and didn't present any evidence and they still believe him? Because they don't know that.
They don't cover it.
I know that seems impossible to believe, but right-wing media has never covered those 60 court cases that he lost. Yeah. If they see with their own eyes, people going up on the stand going, no, we knew they were fake electors and we knew that he hadn't won the election, but we thought if we do the fake electors, well, then maybe we could subvert democracy. And it's Republican after Republican after Republican saying, yeah, we were trying to basically do a coup. If that's the case, and if they manage to flip some of these folks, and they have already flipped a whole bunch of the fake electors, and they have damning evidence, which I think they do, but we're gonna have to see in trial. If they see that with their own eyes, for a lot of Republicans, I know it seems hard to believe, but it'll be the very first time they have ever seen any of that evidence.
So I just wanted to reinforce the point that you're making, because just yesterday, following Trump's indictment, you have Greg Gutfeld and a whole host of right-wing media figures arguing that the indictment has to do with what Trump said, that this was a violation of his freedom of speech, which, by the way, is incredibly easy to debunk. It's literally stated in the second page of this 45-page indictment that Trump challenging the validity of the results of the election is totally fine. This indictment has nothing to do with what Trump said, but rather the actions that Trump engaged in. And so, as we've shared with you before, but I'll just reiterate again, he is facing 4 counts. I want to go through those counts with you quickly. So, he's facing a federal case brought in Washington this week by the special counsel. I'm sorry. So there are 3 indictments. This particular indictment, having to do with his attempts to overturn the results of the election, have 4 counts, and one of them has to do with the fact that he tried to interrupt the January 6th proceedings in which the Vice President Mike Pence was supposed to certify the results of the election, and luckily, even after the riots took place, Pence went back and managed to certify the election. He's also facing 1 count. Let me actually bring it up real quick.
Can I just jump in on freedom of speech for a second? So look, guys, I know they do ridiculous arguments all the time. And there's one, though, they really, really should be doing, and I'm surprised they're not doing. I'll help them out in a second. But this idea of freedom of speech, just because he said things out loud, God, it's depressing that that works with anyone. But guys, there's tons of things that you say that are still crimes. Like if you say to a hitman, I'd like to hire you to murder my wife, just because you said it out loud doesn't make it freedom of speech. That's still a crime.
Totally.
Right? There are many things you can say that are crimes. But for right-wingers, it's so easy. But to be fair,
you can't defame people. That's not protected by the First Amendment.
Right, and we can give you dozens of examples. There's so many crimes where you say, hey, I'm going to kill you is also a crime just because you said. But for a lot of right-wingers, but sometimes on the left too, but mainly right-wingers these days, like they don't care about the facts. They'll believe anything as long as it helps their side, right? So they hear freedom of speech, they're like, yeah, that sounds right. Well, how does this sound right? Did you think about it for a second? But guys, the argument they're not making is the curious one. This indictment is about, hey, you knew the election, you had lost the election, and then you lied about it, and you did this fake elector scheme. Well, the whole case falls apart instantly if the election was stolen and Trump wasn't lying at all. He had actually won the election.
Right.
So MAGA, golden opportunity. Golden. Right. Present all of your mules, all of your Krakens, all of your dumps. I'm not the one who said it, Trump said it. Okay, massive or otherwise.
All of your Hugo Chavez's.
The Hugo Chavez's goes, bring him back. You guys got this. But I'm being serious, guys. If you're MAGA, why aren't you excited? This is your golden opportunity to prove your case. And you could televise it. You could bring in all the evidence. You know why? Because even you know you have 0 evidence, none.
So just to go over the counts one more time. So it's 1 count for conspiracy to defraud the United States, and that's in relation to the fake elector scheme. 2 counts for obstructing the vote certification on January 6th, and 1 count for conspiracy to violate the civil rights, which AKA Trump's attempt to change the vote counts in various swing states like Georgia. And we have him literally recorded on the phone speaking to Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, urging him to find a specific number of votes in his favor in order to flip the state from Biden to Trump. Now, I want to talk just briefly about something else that concerns me, and it's what could happen if he is prosecuted for this, convicted for this, and ends up winning re-election. But before we do, just a moment of comedic relief, because there were two videos of President Joe Biden today that I particularly enjoyed. Here's the first one.
Mr. President, will you be following the arraignment today, sir?
No.
I don't know why, but I just really appreciated that video.
Yeah, I like how honesty is like, no. But mainly whenever they do those bike buy questions, I'm like, don't distract him, please. Like, I'm always worried that he's gonna fall down.
True. Although he looked stable and
he looked good there.
He looked good. Yeah.
All right, go get him, Papa Joe.
And then he decided to troll Trump on Twitter as well, and I wanted to give you a little taste of that.
I like my coffee dark.
Okay, well done. Dark Brandon, makes an appearance here and there. Yeah. I wish that was his typical state of leadership, but we don't really see him that often.
What's interesting is, so of course, MAGA has this alternate reality where Joe Biden's a super tough guy, and then that Dark Brandon is real, and he got Merrick Garland and Jack Smith to do all this. Internal reporting, take it with a grain of salt with all internal reporting, is that he was super frustrated with Merrick Garland. And he's like, was this guy a professor or a prosecutor? And the point is, he was not interfering, and he was super angry at Garland for not going forward, right? Now, look, there's conspiracies here which are not implausible about the timing, that now it's gonna be right in the middle of the general election, the trial is, right? So I don't know, man. All I know is Garland was super slow, and then Jack Smith came in and is an actual prosecutor and is getting things done.
Right.
But it appears that, for all his kidding around about Dark Brandon, Biden was on the sidelines, sitting there stewing at Garland for not going forward.
So look, the one thing I'll say is, for Trump supporters to feel anger or frustration over the fact that this will take Trump away from the campaign trail during the election, I mean, they're justified in being upset about that. However, I would just implore you to consider the fact, if you feel that way, that Trump is the one who put himself in this position to begin with.
100%.
Right?
So look, and by the way, you voters are the ones that put him in the position to be your candidate. He's up by like 40 points, and you guys are the ones doing that. And so look, Jeff Zucker had that great line about when he was fired from CNN. He said, yeah, I did the thing they were accusing me of. So I handed them the gun, and then they shot me with it. And so that's what Trump's doing time after time. He's like, here's another gun, here's another gun, here's another gun.
No, he shows up every single day with a massive bag, like a Santa-sized bag of rakes. Just releases the rakes all around him and continues to like step in it. Like, that is who Donald Trump is. He is his own worst enemy. And I don't know, look, the reason why he's gotten away with so much is because his base is so loyal to him that other Republicans are terrified of them. So they provide cover for Trump, and Trump has had an entire life of entitlement where he has been able to engage in terrible behavior, in some cases breaking the law, but because of his power, because of his wealth, he's able to skirt the consequences. Sure, he might have to pay $25 million in a settlement after he defrauded students with Trump University, but $25 million, what's the big deal? He always finds a way to get out of any situation. But for the first time, it appears, and this is unprecedented, we have a former president facing 3 separate criminal indictments. And each case, we have seen evidence implicating him in these crimes.
So guys, doesn't it matter what the facts are? So for a while, John Edwards was pretending to be the most progressive in one of the presidential campaigns. I never bought into it. You go back and check the tapes. But if you did buy into it, you like his policies, right? And then it turns out that he lied and cheated, not just in his having an affair on his wife, but it affected campaign finance, etc. Were we supposed to be like, I don't care about the facts? Nope. He was, the one that was claiming to be the most far left, so we support him. No, It looked like to us he did it, and by the way, he got away with it. And, ironically, his prosecutor was Jack Smith, and they lost that case. But why? Like, doesn't it matter at all that he did it, right? And to the Republicans, they're saying, like, for example, if he didn't do it, if there was something where they charged him and he wasn't guilty of it, I'd be like, no, that's terrible. Don't do that, because that'll destroy our justice system. People will lose faith in the system, and you should never cry wolf. If you cry wolf, it destroys your credibility on everything else. But Republican voters are saying very loudly and clearly so far in the polling that no, they don't care what the facts are. They don't care that he did it. They don't care that he stepped on 1,000 rakes. They say, well, he's our boy. And so we hate you guys, and he hates you guys, so we're sticking with him. But we'll see if that holds up, if a whole bunch of this evidence comes out in a way that is spectacularly public. But remember, most of this is gonna happen after the biggest primary states, and that is, it might be devastating for the Republican Party.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because I've been curious about what the actual reporting is, what the truth is about Trump possibly getting elected and getting prosecuted while he's president, or maybe even being a convicted individual, serving in office. What does this all mean? So look, this is obviously an unprecedented situation, so it's kind of difficult to decipher how the courts will rule on this kind of situation, but I'm gonna give you what we know so far. Donald Trump has been arraigned today, and it's in regard to his third indictment, this time having to do with his attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. And the big question is, what does this mean for his campaign? More importantly, what does it mean if he actually gets reelected as president of the United States and he has to stand trial or potentially even get convicted while he's a sitting president? Well, here's what we know if Trump wins the presidency. Were Trump to be elected again and a federal case still be pending on Inauguration Day, he could simply use his power as president to force the Justice Department to drop the matter, as he has suggested he might do. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, so you know that in the charges in New York are state charges, the potential charges in Georgia are state charges, but the two biggest ones are the federal ones. This is the current indictment that is about January 6th and doing the fake elector scheme to do a coup, and the one about the national secrets and the documents that he took to Mar-a-Lago with him. Both of those are federal. Number one, if they're ongoing, he could just say, we drop the cases instantly. So that way you never even get to find out if he's guilty or not. The jury doesn't get to rule on it. And of course, if they've already ruled and he's guilty, he just pardons himself.
That's exactly right. Now, remember, there's the federal cases. He has, if he were to be elected again, he would have the ability to potentially drop those cases. Then there's the state cases that I want to talk about. So the Constitution does not give presidents supervisory authority over state prosecutions. So Trump would not be able to simply call off the case in New York, which is scheduled for trial in March, as the election is heating up, by the way, nor would that approach work for a potential case in Georgia, where the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, has indicated she is nearing a decision on charges in her own election interference investigation. Obviously, we can only predict or speculate what she will decide to do, but based on her public comments, it does appear that she plans on pressing charges against Trump in that case. Again, that's just my speculation. We don't know for sure. But Trump could try to delay those prosecutions should he get elected. And if he's convicted before he wins, he might be able to pardon himself, and he does plan to try to do that. According to the New York Times, it is not clear whether a self-pardon would be legitimate, but no text in the Constitution bars a president from doing so, and the issue has never been tested in court. So, Cenk, we can only speculate as to what would happen in that scenario, since this is unprecedented. What do you think would happen?
So let's say that, so the federal cases are clear. He's going to get rid of them the minute he wins the election. It's over, right? It doesn't matter if the jury said guilty already, gave him a 20-year sentence, etc. Instantly gone. And co-conspirators, you're all free to go, right? But for the state charges, I can't imagine that they would say, well, the president of the United States, this is in the hypothetical where he wins, and there's no question about it, right? The president of the United States is now behind bars in Rikers Island, and he'll be presidenting, a made up word I love, from Rikers. No, that's not gonna happen, okay? Right. So what'll likely happen is, well, number one, they'll do appeals. That might last 4 years in and of itself. But even if he's gone through all the appeals, they'll very likely say he will serve after his term is up. Right, and so because he's got to be president, or maybe
if his term is up,
right? If his term's ever up, and that's what we're all worried about. But the funniest thing in the world would be if they did house arrest, as in the White House.
Oh, that would be a freaking vacation. I mean, that's like the presidency of his dreams. That's what he wanted to do all day anyway.
But could you imagine the president of the United States is serving house arrest in the White House? Okay.
I mean,
if he had an ankle bracelet and the world leaders had to come see him because he literally can't leave the White House because he's under arrest.
That's also not going to happen.
Okay, now again, those things are amazing possibilities, theoretically possible, but number one, the elites. Number two, reality. Like if he won the presidency, you got to let him serve. And so he can't do it from behind a prison cell. There's no way they're going to let him stay in prison while he's the president. So that's partly why Trump, there's one thing Trump is right about. He's telling all of his voters, hey, listen, you guys voting for me is a get out of jail free card for all of us. We just break law over and over and over again, me and my supporters. If you guys, by the way, the January 6th guys, I'm gonna pardon a lot of you all, right? You just break the law, be violent, do whatever the hell you want, and as long as we win, I just wipe them all away. Law doesn't matter anymore, the Constitution doesn't matter, democracy doesn't matter, there are no laws. Let's just go nuts. And that is, and by the way, that's what happens in fascist regimes. They send in brown shirts and promote vigilante violence. They ignore the laws, and might makes right. And today, Marjorie Taylor Greene said we're in a post-Constitution world. Now, what does that mean? People go, I don't know what that means. I know what it means. She's saying we're pretending you didn't listen to the Constitution based on nothing. You commit a crime, you get prosecuted. Of course, that's in the Constitution. Like, there's nothing unconstitutional about that at all, not 1%.
Oh, right? I see what you're saying. Yeah. I thought you meant she was trying to imply that screw the Constitution, it doesn't matter.
No, she is implying that.
Oh, okay.
So she's saying, oh, the Democrats struck first against the Constitution.
Did they though?
They did, of course they did. She made it up. You know it's in the Constitution that if your name is Donald J. Trump, you're not allowed to be prosecuted. No, look, to be fair, she didn't say that, right? But her arguments are hyperbolic and ridiculous and have no basis in fact. But why? Why is she saying that? She's saying that for the same reason that Trump today put out a statement saying, wait till we get in charge, then we're gonna have strike back. Yeah. Okay, so meaning we don't give a goddamn if you broke a law or didn't break the law. We're gonna put all of you people in prison, and we're in a post-constitutional world now, so we don't have to listen to the Constitution. And we're gonna pretend it's because, oh, you guys did it first. No, there's a giant difference, all the difference in the world of being prosecuted for something you did versus something you didn't do. Okay, so you can't just say, and that's why, look guys, if they cared about principles or ideas at all, they would never say this stuff out loud, right? But you wouldn't say, like Marjorie Taylor Greene did, I'm gonna impeach Biden on day one. That's what she proposed on day one. Because then people know you don't care if he did anything wrong, you just wanna impeach him for political reasons. Exactly. So that's a fact. And now she's saying, basically, I don't care if Trump did it or not. I don't care what the Constitution says. We're gonna prosecute all of you guys and we're gonna try to put you in prison for crimes we haven't even alleged. We haven't even alleged. It doesn't matter what you did. We're gonna lock you up. And remember, they always believe this. That's why the #1 chant during the 2016 election for Republicans about Hillary Clinton was, lock her up, lock her up. Facts don't matter. Might makes right. That is fascist 101.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, presidential candidate Marianne Williamson will be joining us in studio for an interview. Don't miss it.
the Young Turks, Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Joining us now live in studio, presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. Marianne, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, let's get started. So you're running for president.
Yeah.
You're the most progressive of the three candidates on the Democratic side, obviously Biden, RFK Jr., and yourself. I just checked, Real Clear Politics has your average at 6%. And Kennedy at 13%. And so that's just the average, but it's not the latest poll. So given that you're the most progressive, Marianne, why do you think that more voters haven't come over to your side as they did for Bernie and some others in the last two races?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that in the New York Times poll yesterday on the front page, the day before, Bobby was at 13 and I was at 10. And that is definitely a gold standard poll. So that's good news. And I think particularly given how invisibilized I've been, how blackballed I've been from certain mainstream media, et cetera, holding on to that 10 is a big deal. Why more people on the left have not embraced my candidacy? I spent a lot of time trying to analyze that and think about that, and it does me no good at a certain point. I don't understand it, and it's difficult even to talk about, because how can you talk about it without sounding whiny?
Well, can I ask you something related to that? Because the current political landscape today, I think, is very different from what it was in 2016. I'm noticing a bit of a realignment when it comes to the electorate. I don't know if you can speak to that at all, where there seems to be a lot of disappointment with the Democratic Party. There has definitely been a fracturing of the left wing of the Democratic Party. The Justice Democrats, for instance, there's a big story out today about how they're really losing a lot of power and political capital. And so I'm wondering if there's just this level of disempowered left-wing voters who are kind of trying to find a home somewhere. I'm just curious what you think about when you talk to people on the campaign trail. Like, what are you noticing in terms of the rhetoric you're hearing, the conversations you're having?
What I notice is that realignment. You just said they lost power. No, they've abdicated power, and they continue to abdicate power. And they abdicate power every time they endorse Biden. So what do we? It's ridiculous, actually. The left needs some spine, in my opinion. So at this point, what I'm addressing is the realignment that's out there. Gen Z voters who don't really care about this conversation about 2016. They care about the fact they do not have health care. They care about the fact that they have college loans. They care about the fact that they cannot afford to pay for college. They care about the fact that they don't have paid family leave, that they don't have a guaranteed living wage. This is what I see on the street. People who are just, those conversations seem elite to them at this point. And that's what I'm speaking into. And I also feel another very significant realignment has to do with anti-corporatism itself. If this was 10 years ago, I would feel like, don't you get it? Corporations are ruling the world, don't you get it? We don't have universal health care because of insurance companies. People are rationing their insulin because of pharmaceutical companies. We don't have green energy because of big oil. We have toxins in our food and water because of big chem, big agriculture, big food companies. We have our foreign policy is dominated by defense contractors. And 10 years ago, I might see some blank stares. Today, no. We have enough people in this country on both left and right. Remember, among Republicans as well as Democrats, the majority want universal health care. Among the Republicans as well as Democrats, the majority want tuition-free college and tech school. Among Republicans and Democrats, even among gun owners, they want common sense gun safety laws. So I'm just moving forward, talking to people, and the people I talk to, whether it's Gen Z, just the people out there, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Michigan, Nevada. They're not thinking, well, what is the left going to do? That's just not where they live.
But it's interesting because the power players in the media, the power players in Washington, seem to want to really focus on what divides Americans. And I think that is a nonpartisan effort. The unwillingness to really talk about what American voters overwhelmingly agree on as opposed to what they disagree on?
Because they're creating a false dichotomy. They create look over here, because they don't want you to look up there. It's a don't look up thing. The real axis is between the powerful and the powerless. The real axis is between those who have capital and easy access to capital versus those who are just struggling to get by. And I think enough people, at least in my experience, are open to hearing that. And of course, they don't want to look at what's real because they do more. This is legalized bribery we've got here. They do more to serve the short-term profit maximization of their donors than to serve the expressed will of their constituents. Not just the safety, health, and well-being of their constituents, but even the expressed will of their constituents. That's how deep the corruption is. And my sense out in America is people are so ready to go past whether or not they see this. The real question is, okay, what are we going to do about it? And continuing to endorse Biden is not pushing Biden left.
Definitely not.
Marianne, you have a populist message that we just heard, which resonates in all quarters of politics. We've seen it now in 100 different cases, and one of the reasons, honestly, Trump rose up on the right. You know, people always say racism, sexism, bigotry, and there's a lot of truth to that, but there's a huge amount of the electorate that didn't back Trump because of that. They backed him because of the powerful versus the powerless, as you just discussed here. And certainly progressives feel that way. You just outlined a whole bunch of policies, paid family leave and the others that you just listed, that are very progressive, that we know for a fact, not just progressives, but Democratic voters overall.
And Republicans.
And by the way, Republicans, but like about 90, for example, again, take paid family leave. 94%, I believe, of Democrats are in favor of it, and 84% of the whole country, 74% of Republicans, et cetera.
I mean, I think our elected lawmakers should wait for those poll numbers to go up a little bit more before they
just in case.
Right, and that joke goes to the point I'm going to make. So your positions, and I think this is just a simple matter of fact. You could say, hey, I still don't agree with her positions, or I'm still not going to vote for her, but your positions are, looking at the polling numbers, the most popular, and certainly on the Democratic side, and you have your finger on the pulse on populism, et cetera, but yet the numbers are not going up. Now, I have a theory about that. It's one I shared with you before you even started your campaign, which is your number one opponent is going to be media. Because they're going to do two things. One is shut you out, and the other is say that you can't win. So that's how they attack all progressives, and then they go, "Oh, I didn't attack. I'm just saying something that that we all believe." Who's we? Who's all? Like, because if you I can make a case that Joe Biden can't win. An incumbent that is under 50% almost never wins. He's often under 40%. So you could argue that he's the least electable, but no one in media other than me has ever made that argument.
I mean, the New York Times latest poll shows that he's in a dead heat with Donald Trump, who was just arraigned for his third indictment.
100%, but let me get to the question. Yeah. So given all of that, but what I'm interested in is, as you're living this now for the second time, what is it that you think actually causes that mechanism? How does it get put into play? Because I don't think it's a memo. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I don't think the New York Times and the Washington Post talk and say, hey, let's make sure we keep out Marianne.
Oh, I think they do.
Okay, interesting, go ahead.
I absolutely think they do. I can't tell you how many times we've been booked and then it's canceled.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely, of course they do. She's not, don't have her on. Absolutely, you better believe it, don't have her on. Yeah, no, that's exactly how it works. And the hit pieces and the smears and the president's press secretary coming onto the podium at the White House to mock me. Absolutely, it's intentional. And it's intentional because they know that I'm saying the things. It's not like they don't know that these are the popular positions. They do know that these are the popular positions, so they say, don't let her on to say it, because she could start a wildfire. And that's why I feel that the 10% I have, given the blackballing, given the hits, I'm thinking we're doing pretty well.
Well, I remember in 2016, Senator Sanders wasn't even really on my radar. Like, he had already entered the race, but I didn't really take his candidacy seriously until the first Democratic primary debate. And given what your numbers are, given what RFK Jr.'s numbers are, it is fascinating that those percentages have not translated to a commitment by the DNC to have a debate. And I think, regardless of what you think about the candidates, primarying Biden, you should be in favor of allowing that debate to happen. The American electorate deserves to hear the ideas espoused by all these different candidates, and the inability to even have that debate, I think, is anti-democratic, which is ironic given what the Democratic Party has really hung its hat on over the last election, which is we got to save our democracy.
Yeah.
Well, what good is a democracy when you're intentionally trying to drown out candidates that want to challenge the incumbent?
And they have been saying that, and it's very undemocratic. And the American people, particularly at this time, should be listening to all of the options. They should be hearing what President Biden has planned for 4 years. What do I have planned for the next 4 years? And what does Bobby Kennedy have planned for the next 4 years? Because those are very different agendas. And it should be the American people who make the decision. It should not be like a bunch of men 100 years ago smoking cigars deciding who the candidate will be. And the traditional role of the Democratic Party is to stand to the back until the electorate has decided. But hey, it's a major multi-billion-dollar corporation. That's really what we're talking about here. And there is institutional resistance to anyone but Biden because they've decided it for now. And the larger institutional resistance is the system itself. And the entire matrix of corporate tyrants, whether it's insurance, pharmaceutical, big ag, big chemical, big food, gun manufacturers and chemical companies and big oil and defense contractors. And all that the political parties are doing is chopping wood and carrying water for them because those are their donors. And that's what I think Americans are understanding. It's a bigger picture. And it really is, we need a new progressive era to push back against the second golden age, just like what happened before.
So I want to dive into that institutional resistance that you mentioned there, because that's the one thing I'm most interested in. Because now, okay, latest poll is at 10%.
Yeah.
10% is an undeniable number.
Yes.
So Andrew Yang, and I like Andrew, but he didn't get near 10% in the last time around. Of course, different factors, there's a lot more people running, et cetera. But you're running against an incumbent president, you're sitting at 10%, yet no one's talked about a town hall for you.
I know, it's unbelievable. And I had a town hall on CNN last time. Yes, and Fox gave Bobby a town hall, News Nation, well, they gave him a thing with Sean Hannity. I know, it's kind of like, hello, the invisibilization, the erasure is unbelievable. And that's why I need the support at Marianne2024.com for me to be able to build my own media structure out enough to be able to override that.
So Marianne, what do you think happens though? I mean, I generally tend to think that it's groupthink, but maybe it's more than groupthink. Have you noticed a sense, anything that leads you to believe the institutional power of the Biden administration affecting decisions, whether it's the DNC or affecting the media itself?
All I know is we'll make a deal with a vendor and then get a call from the vendor. Oh, I'm really sorry, we really like you, but we can't do this.
Oh, wow.
Oh, over and over and over again. And there's one state, I don't want to say what it is. We try to hire someone and they're really excited. And then 2 days later, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be able to do this. Clearly, whether it's as simple as if you help her, you will not work in this town again. You will not work for the DNC. Oh, it's smutty out there.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it.
It's like, wow.
Yeah, the same thing happened on a very tiny scale to me when I ran for Congress. We'd go have a debate scheduled. The main Democratic opponent doesn't want the debate, and she has connections to that place. She's the state assembly person. Next thing you know, oh, last second we canceled the debate.
Exactly.
No explanation.
Exactly.
And that happens over and over again. And people don't see it. Part of the reason they don't see it is because the media refuses to cover it.
Absolutely. But you know what? This is how I look at this next election. And by the way, you were talking about Bernie before. Polls showed over and over again that he would have beaten Trump.
Right.
My concern about 2024, first of all, the American people are not in the mood for another Trump-Biden contest. There's no appetite for it. A president who has given more oil drilling permits than even Trump did, a president who approved the Willow Project, calls himself the climate president. This is so absurd. The admittedly healthy investments in green energy that are in the Inflation Reduction Act are completely nullified by all of his gifts subsidies and allowances to big oil. My concern is not the people who will vote for Trump. My concern is how many people will stay home in 2024. I've met so many young people. They are not showing up to vote for a president who approved the Willow Project and approved so many oil drilling.
It's interesting that you bring that up because just yesterday I covered a story about a group of Democratic strategists. They're referring to themselves as the White Stripe Project. And they are trying to bring in white voters without a college degree who apparently sit it out. They don't go to the polls, they don't vote. And so their whole strategy is to use data in order to lean into race politics, to encourage them to come to the polls. Like, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. And it makes me think, well, there's a real good possibility that Trump could get elected.
There is absolutely a good possibility.
And if that's the kind of strategy they have in mind, I mean, it's
like
honestly,
watching a
it's
car
let's
crash in
address
slow motion.
anything other than what is popular with the electorate, which is, policy, universal policy that materially improves people's lives.
Exactly, and Franklin Roosevelt said we wouldn't have to worry about a fascist takeover as long as democracy delivered on its promises. The problem is that democracy is not delivering on its promises. Every other advanced democracy has universal health care. 1 in 4 Americans live with a medical debt. We have people rationing our insulin in this country. 68,000 people die every year from lack of health care. 85 million uninsured or underinsured. 18 million who cannot afford to pay for the prescriptions their doctors give them. Offer people a life in which democracy is delivering on its promises. Once again, every other advanced democracy has tuition-free college and tech school. That's how we're going to win in 2024. And that's why I'm going to stay in here. And that's why I'm inching forward. And that's why I believe, because I heard you say it, and I have quoted it so many times. I heard you say, I was just watching you one day and you said, somebody is going to break through. And I believe that with all my heart. And on a certain level, it doesn't even matter who it is. We all have to just keep leaning on the wall, leaning on it, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a TV network, whether it's a candidacy. It's not as important as that we just keep leaning on the wall. And I agree with you. Somebody is going to break through.
So I apologize for the way I phrase this, and I hope you don't take offense to it, but I want to know, what do you think makes you special? Because we have several Justice Democrats elected into Congress. They're not corrupt. They didn't take corporate money. They didn't take corporate PAC money. They don't have big donors. They certainly took small dollar donors, and they said everything that you're telling us right now. But what is your theory of change? How are we to believe, let's say in a world where we have genuinely free and fair elections and the press doesn't try to suppress you, and you win, what would you do differently?
I wouldn't care about getting reelected. To do what I want to do, first of all, nothing makes me special, but I'm here. That's the only thing, is that I'm here. Yeah. I'm not thinking about, ooh, they'll get mad at me and they'll take my committee assignment away and I won't get Nancy's or whomever's or Hakeem's cell phone number anymore, and they won't primary me if I'm a good girl and I'll play along, or a good boy. That's the only thing. It's not special. It's just I'm not one of them. They can't do anything for me. And somebody has, that's why I think it has to be somebody from the outside at this point. Because and I think I heard you say that also, what that system says is that you're only qualified to do this if you are qualified to maintain and perpetuate the system as it is. My qualification is that I know how to disrupt it. How do I know? I'm doing it. I'm right here, right now. Somebody has to just say the quiet part out loud. So everything that you said, yeah, they're willing to say it within the context of permission granted by the system. I would be more like Roosevelt. I welcome their hatred. I welcome their hatred. And I would govern in a way that nobody could possibly do if they were thinking about even trying to be reelected. I think of myself as, I want to give this country a chiropractic adjustment. The people need the government needs its heart, and the people need our spine, for God's sake. And then do it for 4 years, get in there, and then hand it over to a younger generation that deserves it at this point.
Last question for me, Marianne. So you make a compelling case here, and when I see you in person and we talk in person and on air, you sound completely different than how the media portrays you, right?
Different.
So like the media has you as unelectable and crystals and rocks and just and internal turmoil. Everything is negative. I haven't seen
you're very mean to your staff.
I throw phones and I.
Yeah, whereas Biden, by the way, curses all the time. And the first time they ever wrote a story about it was a couple of weeks ago. Is like, lovable grandpa from Scranton apparently tearing people's heads off internally, but nobody ever reports it. But anyway, but my point here, Marianne, is, or my question is, so you got this compelling case, but the media says only Biden can beat Trump. And so that is the number, and by the way, that is exactly how the media defeated Bernie Sanders. It wasn't Biden who defeated Bernie Sanders.
Poll after poll after poll said he was the one who would have beaten him.
Yeah, and same thing with Hillary Clinton. So, but my question is, Marianne, what is your case for why you could do better than Biden against Trump or any Republican?
First of all, for everything that we've been talking about here, my agenda is the agenda that aligns with the will of the American people. That's why. That's number one. Offer people an agenda that will materially unshackle them from the economic conditions that are holding them down. When you have 1/3 of America's workforce living on less than $13 an hour, half of them unable to find a job, half of America's seniors living on less than $25,000 a year, I'm offering an agenda not only of the universal health care, the tuition-free college, the paid family leave, the child care, the guaranteed sick pay and guaranteed livable wage, my economic bill of rights, housing. Also, it's time to declare a climate emergency. It's time to declare a climate emergency. Mass mobilization. Let's transition justly from a dirty economy to a clean economy, and let's have a Department of Peace and transition from a war economy to a peace economy. The reason I'm the one who can beat Trump is because I have something to offer. And I agree with you. If we're going to talk about somebody who is a weak candidate, the president is a weak candidate. This is not the same race as 2020, and I don't think he's the one to beat Trump. Let me in there.
All right. Look, we'll have the link to your website as we do with all the candidates we interview in the description box. But what's the website again?
Marianne 2024.
And I will say this. Look, no matter what you think of the policies, her questions here, her answers here, etc. The one thing she said that I have to agree with is she showed up, right? And that takes courage and that takes spine. And a ton of people did not show up, but here's Marianne representing the actual progressive position in this race. So Marianne, for that alone, we thank you and we appreciate you coming here to make your case.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be with you. Thank you.
We'll be right back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also new members, Valco's 13, Laurel Dragon became a member and then gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. Laurel, you're awesome. Jaxie Jax, Michael Valdersman, and Rio Han. We appreciate all of you guys. They all joined by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. Casper.
All right, well, let's get to our next story.
You spoke to the January 6th Congressional Committee. Have you talked to Jack Smith's investigators?
I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
Listen, we don't have any evidence indicating that former Attorney General Bill Barr spoke to and cooperated with investigators in the January 6th investigation. However, he is acting pretty suspicious, and if I were to speculate and bet money on it, he's been cooperating with investigators. With that said, let's hear more of what he had to say.
When you do look at the indictment, do you think it's something you would have brought?
As a legal matter, I don't see a problem with the indictment. I think that it's not an abuse. The Department of Justice is not acting to weaponize the department by proceeding against the president for a conspiracy to subvert the electoral process. The government has assumed the burden of proving that. The government, in their indictment, takes the position that he had actual knowledge that he had lost the election and the election was stolen through fraud. And they're going to have to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt.
Which is a high bar, of course.
It's a high bar. Now, that leads me to believe that we're only seeing a tip of the iceberg on this.
You think Jack
indictment.
Smith has more?
Oh yes, I would believe he has a lot more, and that's one of the things that impressed me about the indictment. It was very spare, and there were a lot of things he could have said in there, and I think there's a lot more to come, and I think they have a lot more evidence as to President Trump's state of mind.
Boy, he sure does know a lot about what's to come for someone who isn't disclosing whether he's cooperating with the investigation. Cenk, what say you?
First, I want to commend Kaitlan Collins for doing the awkward pause.
Totally.
Because it just highlighted how he really, really doesn't want to answer that question, which then let us all know he clearly talked to the prosecutors. And that's why he's also saying, oh, they got a lot more evidence than that. And as if to say, believe me, I know, because I'm part of the people who gave him that evidence. Look, so Bill Barr, the context has to be given for him. Bill Barr is not a normal person in politics. He's not a normal conservative. He is extreme right wing.
Yep.
He's from the Unitary Executive Authority branch of the right wing movement. Part of the reason that he made a big public case for Donald Trump before he was even in the administration, protecting him from the impeachments. And part of the reason he joined the Trump administration is because he liked the idea of how much they could abuse executive authority. That is what he's been wanting to do his whole life. He's in that Dick Cheney school, but not in the Dick Cheney school against Trump. He was perfectly happy to have Trump do it. That's why he became his attorney general. And he covered for him in 18 different ways, including the Mueller report, where he totally misrepresented what the Mueller report did. So this guy's a little bit to the right of Attila the Hun on the right wing spectrum. And even this guy's like, guys, what are you doing? He's obviously guilty. He's the most guilty man in America. And he's like, I was there. Look.
No, this is,
Yeah.
You need to elaborate on what this guy's genuine beliefs are, right? Because it shows you that Trump went too far even for him. The ideology that people like Bill Barr have seeks to disempower Congress, to solidify and increase power of the executive branch. And by the way, I mean, Trump gave a speech fairly recently where he outlined exactly how he wants to do that. And so given that Trump wanted to pull this stunt in essentially overturning the results of the election in order to remain in power, you would assume that someone like Bill Barr would want to provide cover for him. But Bill Barr is not providing cover for him, which shows you that, and remember, he's very close to Trump. He's his attorney general, and he is willing to go against Trump in a very public way after providing cover for him throughout Trump's administration. With that said, go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so look, guys, this also shows you why the unitary executive theory is insanity and very dangerous. Because the two guys who have been in government recently that are most in favor of it are Bill Barr and John Bolton. And that's why they went to go work for Trump in the first place, because they thought this is the one guy who could execute the unitary executive. Then they come to work for him and they realize, oh my God, this guy's a lunatic. And we don't want him having that power. Yeah, duh, that's why we don't want any dictator. Because you don't get to pick Bill Barr doesn't get to pick the dictator, John Bolton doesn't get to pick him. Usually dictators pick themselves. And so Trump has decided to pick himself. And if you're wondering, well, now Trump is like lit into Bill Barr in 18 different ways, calling him every insult in the book. And since I can't stand Bill Barr to begin with, I'm very open to the idea that Bill Barr is then going, oh yeah, well then I'm gonna do strike back because I'm a right winger too and I could fight back. No, to be fair to Bill Barr, all of this started, remember he was with Trump all the way to the end, right? All this started when Trump said, now reverse the election for me even though I lost. And Bill Barr's like, well look, I want you to have tons of power. I want any president to have tons of power. I want you to be able to ignore Congress, but we're not gonna ignore elections, are we? And Trump is like, of course we are. What did you think we were doing here?
Yeah, Bill Barr just wants the tip. Like he doesn't want full-blown dictatorial regime.
Yeah, and he's beginning to realize, oh, when you root for dictatorship, you might not get what you thought you were gonna get. And so on the evidence, Trump's like, well, how about the mules and the Krakens and stuff? And he's like, Mr. President, that evidence is, I can't say the full word here, but BS. And he said the real thing. He's like, it's not remotely true. The Justice Department checked 100 times over. We want you to win, but you didn't.
Now, Barr also stated that, he doesn't. So during this interview with Kaitlan Collins, he notes that at first he was willing to kind of give Trump the benefit of the doubt when he seemed to believe that he actually won the election, that it was stolen from him. But he quickly reversed that generosity toward Trump. Let's watch this video.
Do you think he knew that he lost the election?
Do I personally believe that? Yeah, at first I wasn't sure, but I have come to believe that he knew well that he had lost the election. Comments from people like Bannon and Stone before the election, saying that he was gonna claim it was stolen if he was falling behind on election night, and that was the plan of action. I find those statements very troubling. And then you see that he does that on election night. And then the evidence that has come out since that, the press reports and the indictment and his lack of curiosity as to what the actual facts were, just leaves me, that's my personal opinion. That's my personal opinion. We'll see if the government can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Now, that is his personal opinion, something that you should absolutely keep in mind as I share with you the fact that he would potentially still be willing to vote for Trump if he were the Republican nominee for the 2024 election. Kaitlan Collins asked him about it, and he said, quote, "I will have to wait to see what the situation is, and I will pick my poison at that point."
Because he hates the Democrats and he hates Joe Biden. And so these guys, I mean, look, to be fair to them, if it turned out that the Democratic candidate was a complete criminal, and then I had to stomach voting for a Republican like Ted Cruz, I would be talking about picking your poison too. And it would, so I get that perspective. He really, really, really wants to vote for a Republican, but the guy is definitely a criminal. And he definitely tried to overthrow our democracy and do a coup. Bill Barr was at the scene of the crime. I mean, he was right there when they determined for sure that there was not fraud in the election. Trump knew that with absolute certainty and went to try to steal the election anyway. So, look, guys, last thing on this is, in any real world, there is no question. I mean, he says, we'll have to see. That's my personal opinion. What's the opinion? There's fake electors. They signed a document that's and handed it into Congress. It's an absolute crime. They were not the real electors. It's not even close. Did Donald Trump order it? Of course he ordered it. Who else ordered it? Was it Hugo Chavez? Was it Walter Mondale? No, of course Trump ordered it. And now his last line of defense is he's saying, my lawyers made me do it. And he's throwing Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman under a bus. By the way, the world's worst plan. Because I think there's only one guy that has it, like maybe 2 to 3 guys, but certainly one of the top guys who could do any kind of damage to Trump is if Giuliani gets on the stand because Trump threw him under the bus and says, yeah, we planned this together and we knew that we hadn't won the election. We were just trying to steal it. And Trump keeps poking that bear because he pokes every bear because he'll throw anyone under the bus to try to save his own ass.
Yeah.
So
there's already reporting on that, how he's planning on throwing Giuliani and Eastman under the bus. We'll see how this all plays out.
Yeah, and he threw Bill Barr under a bus, and he threw Sessions under a bus. By the way, of his 44 cabinet members that he had throughout his 4 years in office, only 4 are supporting him. Only 4 out of 44, because the other 40 saw him in action. They're like, and they went excitedly to go work for him. And then they come out of the building and go, no, not him. The guy's a lunatic. The guy's a total lunatic, right? And the MAGA guys are like, nope, don't believe it. I don't believe every single person who has ever had contact with him saying this guy's crazy and a criminal.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll talk about former Vice President Mike Pence suddenly growing a spine and giving us some spicy takes. We'll share those takes with you when we return.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.